Hello, GERO 200. Here we are again. Today is Sunday, April 9th. A happy Easter to those who are celebrating. Happy Ramadan to those who are celebrating. Happy Passover to those who are celebrating. And no matter what you're doing, hopefully you'll have something sweet and delicious for dinner tonight.
And if you're John Walsh, you say Happy Hanukkah. Because I had the best intent, but I had a flawed senior moment.
Sorry about that.
Well, I hope you guys, this is a class in gerontology, and I hope you appreciated it. Right? Very cool.
We bring it to life.
That's right.
Alrighty, so this is week 13. We're talking about power of attorney for financial, and we're talking about elder abuse.
Awesome.
These two topics sadly, fit together very well because in the United States, the number one type of elder abuse that we see is financial abuse. So it's important to understand how to manage the financial affairs of an older person that needs assistance. And there's various ways that you can do that. So we'll walk you through that. And it's also important to kind of be alert to the fact that if you have a vulnerable elder adult in your family, you need to really be monitoring and keeping an eye out so that they're not being financially abused or otherwise abused.
Yeah, don't be giving up passwords to things like your Fidelity account that you guys just opened up.
Yes.
And we're regrading your CT2s this week. Get your paper. With respect to the paper, do not follow this idea.
Just do it later.
All right, this is a t-shirt our students gave to me. All right, let's go right into it. All right, we're going to go down to
week 13.
Week 13, there it is. Okay. Financial power of attorney.
And it's due a week from Monday, a week from tomorrow.
Very cool.
Okay, so we have a easy to read document from AARP about financial power of attorney, so you can open that up if you want.
Here's the link if you want it. We'll go straight to the PDF. All righty, and 2 pages long, so it's pretty,
so not too bad.
It was done in 2010, still totally applicable now, so that's where we use it, okay?
Okay, so last week when we talked about power of attorney for healthcare, I said you don't need a lawyer to do that, and you can go online and, we use the Kaiser form, state of California, the California Medical Board has one, your hospital has one. With power of attorney, the institutions that you would be dealing with, banks, et cetera, tend to be a little more concerned to make sure that this is legitimate. So it might be something where you're more likely to need to hire an attorney, or you can go to your bank if you need to have power of attorney for an elderly relative's bank account. You can go to that bank and say, do you have a form? And quite often, even if you have a power of attorney form that you've drafted with your estate planning attorney, the bank will say, you know what, we're glad you have your form. We want you to use our form. And so you may have to have multiple documents, which I don't like as a lawyer. I think it's a waste of time and energy, but the banks are very picky about what forms they will honor. And I guess it saves them time in the long run.
And there's multiple layers for the financial issues that your grandpa, say, may be having, or grandma. They may be drawing off their retirement accounts. And
yeah. So they might have an account with Fidelity or T. Rowe Price or Vanguard.
So you may need access to that.
They might have a pension plan that they get payments from.
They might mortgage in their house.
They might have a reverse mortgage. They might have a checking account, a savings account, CDs. So they might have accounts at multiple different banks, and that does make life more complicated.
So when you talk to your parents about finance, and hopefully the critical thing assignment got you thinking, but and you start talking, these are real world discussions you should be having with your parents and grandparents about, where the finances lay, and so ask these very pointed questions about the different sources of income. If they get incapacitated, who's in charge, and it makes life a lot easier.
Yeah. Now, when do you need a power of attorney? Just practical advice. I told everyone that once you turn 18, you should really have a power of attorney for healthcare. When do you need a power of attorney for financial? It really depends on how many assets you have and how complicated your life is. And do you have someone that could pay your bills for you if you, get into an electric scooter accident on the USC campus and you end up in the hospital? And so the number one piece of advice I probably would give you for your bank account, check account, whatever financial accounts you have right now, is make sure that if you have the ability to fill out a beneficiary, a transfer on death or payable on death, TOD or POD type form, you can go online. Most of you probably have online accounts. You can go online and look up the form and fill it out. And maybe you want to make sure that that money goes to your brother or your sister or your friend or your partner or your parents or your aunt or uncle, whatever. Go ahead and fill that out so that if something did happen to you, uh, at least that's one little piece of information that's already handled. So now let's get into power of attorney. It's a written document, a legal document that you sign in order to give someone else, your agent, the authority to do certain financial transactions for you. You are the principal. So think of the principal as the main person. So I'm the person with the account, and I make John my agent. So I sign a power of attorney naming John as my agent. I'm the principal, he's the agent. And a lot of people get that confused, so don't worry about it if it's confusing at first. But just think about a real estate agent. You hire a realtor to do certain things for you. With a power of attorney, it can be very broad. So the one that I have says that John can do anything. He can deal with the bank. He can file income tax returns. He could buy and sell property. He can buy and sell cars. He can handle our retirement accounts, anything, and he's given me the power to do the same thing for him. But you could also, for example, I'm the executor for my dad's estate. He passed away in February. And so I'm probably, because his property is back in Louisiana and I'm in California, I'm probably going to give the power of attorney to sign real estate purchase and sale documents to the actual attorney, the lawyer who's handling our estate for us. And that way I won't have to fly back to Louisiana every time we sell a piece of property that he owned. And so you might have a very limited power of attorney for a specific amount of time for a specific purpose. Or what's more common with elderly people who need support with their financial issues is you would have a broad power of attorney. And it can give you the power to deal with their health insurance, their long-term care insurance, things like that, Social Security. So there's usually a big long laundry list, and you can check all the boxes, or there's a little box at the bottom that says all of the above. Okay, there's three types of power of attorneys. Conventional power of attorney. This is what I would do for the lawyer in Louisiana to allow him to sign purchase and sale real estate documents. I'm going to give it to him, and I'm going to say, it begins on, let's say, May 1st, and it ends, and it ends when we're done with this transaction. And I misspoke. The conventional power of attorney begins when you sign it, and it ends when you become mentally incapacitated. So I would do for him a conventional power of attorney with a set end date. A springing power of attorney happens only when you become incapacitated. So I could have a power of attorney and it springs into effect. So I'm fine right now. I get hit by an e-bike or an e-scooter on campus. I hit my head, I'm unconscious, and then I have a power of attorney that goes into effect when I'm incapacitated and I can no longer make my own decisions. I don't love those because then you have to go through this process. Is the person truly incapacitated? Are they able to make their own decisions? You've got to get evidence. What I like, and it's easy, if you trust the person that you make your agent, is a durable power of attorney. So it begins when it's signed and it remains in effect for the rest of my life. So John can make financial decisions for me, and I can make financial decisions for him unless we cancel it.
Right, but I mean, the beautiful thing about a long, trusting relationship, and this is what you're gonna hopefully, this is the goal that you all have, is we have always had completely shared finances. We've always had completely transparent financial transactions. We know, it's just the way we operate. It makes life so much easier.
And that's what works for us. So that's what we do. And
some people have hidden accounts, and not, it's just.
And we're on the same page financially, so that helps too. I kind of know without even asking him, what decision he's going to make in a given situation.
And these things are important. If I suffer a head injury, a surfboard clocks me in the head, Um, but let's say I was single and that happened, then you guys as my child, you need to step in and start paying my car note and my house note and all that because I don't want to go into default and have collection going after it and it's a mess. So this is why
Yeah.
you have this.
And so, absolutely. So, John's, remember, as a lawyer, I like to have layers of protection. So, John's my first agent. If he's unable to serve, my oldest son is my second. And if he's unable to serve, my youngest son is my third power of attorney, my agent for me.
So you guys may have single grandparents, single parents, things like that, and this
Yeah.
is where it's going to kick in for you.
And John's brother is single, and so he's given us power of attorney to help him. We manage his finances.
Yes, we do.
And we like it. It's nice to be able to help someone.
There were some people that were starting to steal from him, and we put the kibosh on it. So
Yeah.
it's
So it's good.
important.
Now, once you have this power of attorney in place, I still manage our finances. I still file our taxes. I still pay our bills. I still move money from accounts to accounts and make investments and monitor our retirement plans and things like that.
So I got to learn all that stuff.
Don't worry, I got it. So anyway, now, so you signed this power of attorney, or maybe you have an older relative who needs to designate someone as an agent to handle paying their bills. What you want to do is monitor what's going on with their account. So I'm not endorsing or saying this is the perfect solution. I use an app called Mint, M-I-N-T, not Mint Mobile. That's the telecom company. But I use an
Our
app.
next door neighbor is the VP of marketing.
There you go.
They just sold it for $2.35 billion
which is awesome for him.
to T-Mobile.
So anyway, I use this app called Mint, and anytime I want to, I can open up the app on my phone and I can see what bills are coming out of my account and what charges are coming in on my credit card. And I can look at my investment accounts and I can see what's going on with everything. So you have a way of monitoring easily. So just because your sister's the one that's paying the bills for grandma, maybe you or your cousin wants to have access to the Mint app and access all of those accounts, and just make sure that suddenly that you're not seeing really big withdrawals, making sure that the person who is acting as agent is not behaving inappropriately.
That's why you got to select your agent wisely.
Yeah, so be careful to select someone that you trust. Be careful to select someone who's good with details, who's good with finances. You wouldn't want to pick someone, nope, we're not to that yet. Be careful that you don't, we're still on financial power of attorney. Go back.
Sure, go back.
Yeah, go back. So anyway, be careful that you pick someone who doesn't have financial issues themselves, because the temptation is there. If someone is struggling financially and they're suddenly given access to grandma's account and grandma has, $75,000 in her checking account, the temptation will be there for someone who's struggling financially to say, well, grandma would want me to buy a new TV, and grandma would want me to get, a new purse. And so
on a surf trip to Tabarua.
Yes, you can go down the wrong road with that. So make sure you have oversight and monitoring. Make sure the person who is the agent is trustworthy. The person who is the agent does not have the right, does not have ownership interest over those funds, does not have the right to keep those funds, does not have the right to use those funds for their own purpose. They only have the right to make those payments, pay those bills, pay the mortgage, pay the rent, pay the credit card bills, pay the gas and electric and the water, for the benefit of the principal. Okay, so you cannot take that money, you don't own it, you don't get to use it. Now, how do you cancel it? Let's say you have signed a power of attorney and you realize that the person you made your agent is a terrible person. Or maybe you're just not close anymore, or maybe they moved out of state and they're just not available and it's just not convenient for them. You can tear up your power of attorney. You can write in writing that you canceled it. You can sign a new one, which is the best thing to do, because if we ever have competing powers of attorney, it's nice to say, well, this one was signed at a later date, and a court or a bank would say, yes, that's the legitimate one, that's the valid one, that's the one we're going to follow. You can put in writing that you want to cancel it. But you should notify the person that you've named as agent so that they're clear on the fact that they no longer have authority under this power of attorney. If you are asked to be the agent for someone, it's good to to talk to the person and figure out what are their accounts, kind of organize things for them. What bank accounts do they have? What debts do they have? What bills do they have to pay? Where are their investments? Do they have long-term care insurance? Do they have disability insurance? Do they have a pension plan? What's all the money coming in, and what's all the money going out right now for them?
The monies.
Okay. So that's everything I have to say about that. Now we can
Okay,
go to
now I
elder
can
abuse.
leave. Okay.
Yes. Sorry for.
Okay. No. You know me, I like to
Okay.
be on it.
So we have some really cool graphics. USC has a National Center on Elder Abuse that has done some really good work. If you're interested in this, it's a great way to get involved in learning about, studying, and preventing elder abuse. And so this is a graphic for the United States. Now, I hear all the time from students who are from cultures where older people are revered and respected and loved, and they say, well, this doesn't happen in my country. Sadly, if you look at the World Health Organization statistics, we're seeing elder abuse in every country, not just the United States. I know that our culture here is, I don't want to say it's the worst, but we don't have as good of a culture as many other countries in terms of how we treat our elders.
Other countries, the guilt and embarrassment of revealing that is pretty overwhelming.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't get reported probably as much. So.
Yeah, but we do see this as a global problem, particularly with now that a lot of caregivers are sandwiched between taking care of their children and taking care of their elders and trying to have careers, and it's a lot of pressure. Okay, so the number one type of elder abuse that we're seeing in the U.S. is current financial abuse by a family member. So you're very vulnerable as you get older to abuse by a family member. Neglect is number two. Emotional abuse, so name calling, that type of psychological abuse, telling someone that that nobody loves them, that telling someone that nobody cares about them. Is number three. Physical abuse, thankfully, is number four, and sexual abuse is the least frequent thing. But 1 in 10 people that were interviewed reported that they had experienced some sort of elder abuse in the past year. Most of the time, the abusers are family members. And so we worry about strangers or caregivers that are not family members, paid caregivers, but we really need to be worried about adult children, spouses, other partners.
That's because society says, well, that family member's watching after them, so who cares? It's all
Yeah,
good.
so we do have to pay attention, and we'll talk about the risk factors and what makes it more likely that a family member could be someone who would be an abuser, and what makes it more likely that an older person could be a victim. We'll talk about those risk factors. Most 93% of elder abuse is not reported. Why is that? If your family member is abusing you, it is a source of shame. And just like domestic violence in younger people, it's a source of shame when someone that you trust and you love and that you think should care about you treats you badly. And so many of these older people don't want to report it because they don't want to get their family member in trouble, and they feel embarrassed. And maybe they, just don't know, is this just how life is, People with dementia are at high risk. So 47% of people with dementia in this study were being mistreated by their caregivers. Now, being a caregiver for someone with dementia is very stressful. So there's a reason why these people with dementia were subject to elder abuse. It's also true that people with dementia may be considered unreliable reporters. So you might have someone with dementia who says, so-and-so is mean to me, so-and-so took my food away, so-and-so hurt me. And then the people that are around that person don't believe them. So try to listen to your elders. And if they are saying that something is wrong, even if you feel like mentally and cognitively they're not 100% there, do some investigation. Try to figure out if there is a sign that something could be wrong.
Some people with dementia do get paranoid, so you're going to have to weigh all that.
Yeah.
So.
Being a victim of self-neglect is associated with higher mortality. So those who were self-neglecting were almost 6 times more likely to die within a year.
You should define neglect, and what does that all mean?
So typically, if you see neglect, so I could neglect John if I don't make him dinner tonight. But if let's say I'm living on my own and I stop making my own food, washing my own clothes, taking care of myself. So I could be in a situation where I'm no longer capable of taking care of myself, and that would be a situation of self-neglect. And so we see both neglect by caregivers, but we also see
So
self-neglect.
that's the other one. So you're the de facto caregiver, and everybody knows you're the caregiver, and they're expecting you that you're going to maintain the person's well-being and integrity, and then you don't do anything.
Yeah,
So
absolutely,
that's
absolutely.
so now is that punishable? That kind of neglect for the care?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So it's a violation of the penal code in California and in every state. It's a separate offense. Go back up. Sorry. So I'm not done with this. So if you are a victim of elder abuse, we talked about self-neglect above. If you're a victim of confirmed elder abuse, you're twice as likely to die. So elder abuse can have very significant consequences. If it's only suspected, but we haven't proven it yet, you're 1.4 times more likely to die. So those are very high risk factors for death. Now we're going to go to the World Health Organization. They have some cool graphics that explains the different types of elder abuse. So we commonly think about elder abuse in terms of physical abuse, even though it's not one of the more common types. But someone who's hit or pushed down on the ground, someone might be subject to physical restraints, or they might be subject to what we call chemical restraints, drugs that are sedatives. So inappropriate use of drugs or restraints. And that could happen whether the person is living at home or whether they're living in a long-term care facility. It's something that the government really watches with long-term care facility in terms of whether they are using drugs to sedate people with dementia.
And this can happen even outside of elders. So, we know of somebody that was in a bad marriage. These two things were happening.
Yes, absolutely,
So
absolutely. And so that's why it's so important for doctors, if you're planning on going to medical school, for firefighters, for police to get training so that they can identify if they see an older person who's on a call and that person has rope burns on their wrists, or maybe their glasses are broken, maybe they have a black eye.
bruises.
There's bruises that you get as you get older just because you may not be as nimble walking around. But doctors are trained to look at, okay, these are bruises and scrapes that I don't normally see in a person this age. So it's definitely good to have training. Psychological or emotional abuse. So like I said, you're humiliating the person. You're saying no one cares about you. No one's going to come to see you. Isolating that person. So let's say other relatives do come to the house and you don't answer the door. Other relatives call on the phone and you say, well, she's sleeping and she can't talk to you right now. That's a red flag. If you are not able to lay eyes on or talk to your loved one because of a caregiver that's constantly giving you excuses for why you can't have that connection, that is a red flag for elder abuse. We see sexual abuse. Like I said, it was the least common type of elder abuse, but it does happen. It happens in facilities.
Assisted living facilities and nursing facilities.
Sometimes it's patient on patient sexual abuse because people with dementia can act out. And sometimes it's caregiver on patient. So it's very important that these facilities, they are required by law to do background checks. And if someone has a conviction that's related to elder abuse or sexual abuse, they would go on a list in the US that would say this person cannot work in a long-term care facility. And if they do work in a long-term care facility, they cannot get paid with federal dollars. So we do have safety measures in place. Financial abuse is the number one type. Someone might start, siphoning money from the bank account. They might open a credit card in the person's name. It's very common for someone's jewelry or valuables to start walking off.
We also saw examples during your financial planning series of lectures of money managers that were stealing their clients' money.
Yes, and so you have to watch. Money managers can be churning the person's account to get commissions. So it's important to understand and to look at those statements to say, okay, has this person gotten a power of attorney so that they can buy and sell whatever they want and exploit someone's finances and investments so that they're making money. So it's really important to keep your eyes out for things like that. Neglect or abandonment, not providing food, housing, or medical care. So maybe you have a family member that's moved in with grandma and is supposed to make sure that grandma gets to her doctor appointments and takes her medicine and gets 3 meals. And then, maybe they decide, well, I'd rather take that money and go out to dinner tonight, or I'd rather take that money and go to a club tonight. And then grandma ends up not having enough food, or maybe losing their housing because they don't have enough money to pay their rent. So those are things that you have to watch for. Um, Obviously, who's most likely to commit elder abuse? The people who have access to the elders. So that's family members and healthcare workers, long-term care workers, healthcare workers, people that have access. And that are in a position of trust. So we don't expect these people to be committing elder abuse, but we still have to keep our eyes on them.
When we say healthcare workers, unlikely to be your primary care physician, but likely to be
long-term care workers,
the home health aide,
home health aides,
right.
Home care aides.
Right.
So, you might have someone who has hired a home care aide who comes in and helps them get dressed and helps them bathe and helps them have, make meals and does laundry for them. Those people tend to either be hired independently and not work for an agency, or not have a background check. So there's a high risk with those home care aides. So when we look at risk factors, and the World Health Organization put together this really good chart, what are the risk factors for the victims? That they're female, that they're older than 74. So the older you get, the higher risk you are. That you have a significant disability, so your mobility might be impaired. You may not be able to get out very much, so fewer people are seeing you. You're socially isolated. Poor physical health. Again, you're not leaving the house, so you're more vulnerable to whoever's taking care of you. Depression, so that you're less likely to speak up. You're depressed. You may think, well, I deserve this, or I'm not. I don't deserve better. And you may be less likely to advocate for yourself, or less likely to complain. And low income or low socioeconomic status. And I had a law school professor who used to say, rich people get better stuff. Rich people get better stuff. If you're a wealthy person with a lot of resources, you might have a cleaning lady that comes into your house once a week. You might have a gardener that comes and does your yard once a week. You might have other staff.
Two caregivers.
You might have a daily caregiver. You might have a personal trainer that comes to your house. So you have a lot of different eyes on you. You might hire someone to drive you places. And so you have the resources to get out and go to the movies and go to restaurants and go to doctor appointments, and you've got good health insurance. And so a lot of people are seeing you, and a lot of people are in a position to be able to notice if something's wrong. So the more isolated you are, and to some extent that isolation can come along with being low income because you're not able to afford some of the ways of getting out of your house, the more high risk you are. Now, if you look at who's the abuser, being depressed. So you feel like, I have no options. I'm living with my grandmother. I don't have a job. I'm a loser. I'm a
You're a drug addict too.
And then
Alcoholic.
depressions often can lead to self-medication. So self-medication with alcohol and drugs. So then now you have an alcohol and drug problem, and your bigger concern is, where am I going to get the money to get alcohol? Where am I going to get the money to get my next drug fix or whatever? So you're more likely to financially abuse your elder relative. And then being dependent on the abuse. So you're financially dependent. You are in a relationship with the person. You can't move. You don't have anywhere to go. And so you're very dependent on an abused person. And then even if they're very hard to deal with, and not all of our elderly people are easy to live with, if they're very hard to deal with, then that creates conflict, that creates stress. And so we do need to think about how to support caregivers, and how to support caregivers that are at high risk for being abusers. So
in the models, the financial models you guys are coming up in your discussions, you get more highly qualified people with better pay. You can also do a lot better screening with more money. And that's, we got to figure out a way to maybe have some type of government support for this, because it's not working.
And if the victim lives alone with the abuser, so if grandma lives in a multi-generational house and she has her daughter and her daughter's husband and her 3 grandchildren and maybe a brother or a cousin, and there's 10 people and everybody's eating dinner together all the time and you're all kind of floating in and out and doing things for each other, that grandma's going to be at lower risk. But if grandma's just living with one relative and that relative has problems, then grandma's going to be at higher risk. So we put in some comments from different experts just talking about some of the factors. Seniors are targeted for financial abuse because they may have more resources, they may have more money, they may have a steady flow of checks from investments or rental income or pensions and things that can be taken from them. The next person talks about among Chinese older adults, elder abuse is associated with a high risk of suicide because of the shame and the stigma of having a family member abuse you. And this feeling of, I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to cause problems for my family members. So the older person thinks, I'd rather die than tell someone about what's happening to me, which is really sad. Sexual abuse is more often seen in long-term care settings. And it's a challenge. It's a challenge for staff to make sure that that nothing is happening in that setting without consent.
And when you're running that business, the responsibility is on you.
Yes, absolutely.
You've got to have a plan.
So the key is to have adequate staff.
Yeah, she teaches a course about legal and regulatory issues, and that's a big one. You better have layers of oversight and plan, because when you don't, you're in trouble.
So the next guy talks about social isolation. If someone's isolating an elderly person, that's a red flag. So pay attention to that. And then they talk about how do you protect that person's finances, maybe setting up a trust. We did this for John's brother because he's a very sweet guy. He's 70 years old, still working. He's very, I don't want to say gullible, but he's very sweet and kind and generous. And so people can take.
He was that middle brother, and he lived at home with my mom. Great relationship with my mom. They were buddies. They used to go. But my mom took care of everything for him, and my mom lived till she was 95. And then when she passed, he was, pretty lost, and he was in his 60s and never, my mom used to pay his bills for him. So, it's funny how that kind of relationship would evolve. He actually has a great paying job, and has done well in his life, and he's, doing financially well right now, but that mindset, he got used to it.
So we spent a small amount of money, got his house put in a trust because I think it's less likely that someone will be able to take his house from him. We have his finances set up. I don't even think he knows how to access it. So we handle it for him. And that way he's protected. He's not going to have somebody swoop in and take all of his money. Okay, so let's go down a little bit more. We talk a lot about isolation. Isolation is a risk for elder abuse. Isolation is also a risk for dementia, and it's a risk for significant health problems. It's a risk for depression. If we can solve the isolation problem for elderly people, we would do amazing things in terms of improving the health of elderly people. So this graphic shows us that being lonely is as dangerous as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And I think that really, we all know that smoking cigarettes is bad for you. We know that smoking 15 cigarettes a day would be really bad for you, but we probably didn't know that for seniors, being lonely can also be very risky for your health. And there's a difference between being alone and being lonely. If I'm alone, but I'm happily doing my Spanish lesson on my Duolingo app, and I know that later on tonight I can talk to a friend on the phone, or maybe I can binge watch something on Netflix, or, there's times when I'm alone and I'm perfectly content and happy and I'm not lonely.
Not everybody is super social.
So really, don't panic. Yeah. Don't panic if you're introverted and you think, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. No, if you're alone and you're happy with it and you're fulfilled, it's all about your needs.
Having a doggy.
Yes, having a pet can do, but it's all about your needs. So if you're needing more social interaction and you're not getting it, then that leads to loneliness. And then we have to work to help seniors connect with other people and interact.
And
So
it's not the number, it's how positive. So
yeah,
you hang out with your tribe, people that get you. There's been multiple giant studies, millions of dollars spent on it, and it always came down to the Harvard study, the IBM study about it was the quality of the
not the
relationships.
number, but
Yeah,
the quality.
with the people.
And
Yeah.
I had an aunt who moved into an assisted living facility. She became disabled at a relatively young age and started to have some mini strokes and started to develop. She had a seizure disorder. She started to develop some early onset dementia. She moved into this assisted living facility and had the time of her life. It was like living in a college dorm. She had a bunch of friends automatically. She got involved in a bunch of little committees and jobs, and she was the welcome chair and the newsletter delivery person, and it was great for her. So there are ways to get our seniors more interaction. What are the risk factors for being isolated? Being over 80, having chronic health problems, you can't get out, not having good contact with your family, having low income. So you're not going out and going to casinos or going to plays or going to dinner with your friends if you don't have enough money to afford the Uber. And changing family structures. So,
What does that mean?
well,
Divorce?
yeah. So in my family, my parents were married for a long time. Then they were divorced. They remarried other people. And both of the people that they married don't have kids. They didn't have biological children. They've now been in my lives long enough that I consider them, my bonus parents, my extra parents. But if you're less lucky, you may get to be older and you may not have younger family members that can still
Yeah.
take care of you. So anyway, so just be aware.
Somebody
And
goes through a divorce, it's complicated. It's complicated. Or, there's a death. It's complicated. So you be aware, be ready for the transition, and you get second chances in life. And that's your parents are proof positive of that. So it's
yeah, they both ended up the second time around being
yeah,
married for
and
over 30
being
years.
super
So
happy.
that's super
So
awesome.
yeah.
So how can we deal with loneliness among seniors? Technology. I'm a big fan of technology, and keep in mind that the people that are now in their 60s, they grew up with computers. We tend not to think that boomers have any computer skills, but they do, some of them, and some of them don't. And so we've got to teach elderly people how to use technology, how to use their iPhones, how to use their iPads, and I'm sure there's how to use your Android phone. I'm trying not to be too Apple centric,
Yeah.
but ways of
Samsung.
using Zoom to have meetings. So there's a lot of way that we can connect with our seniors using technology, making sure that our communities are senior friendly, that things are walking distance, or that we have transportation for seniors in our communities is really, really key.
One of the funniest and best examples. So I got this shirt from the students when we went to Costa Rica last year, and we were transitioning. So we were taking the shuttle bus from the Sara to Arnal volcano, and the driver was my age, and he was talking to his our abuela, and she was 104 years old or
Yes.
whatever. They were FaceTiming, and he's driving down these roads.
During a really bad
Oh, it was
rainstorm.
hilarious. It was crazy. And she's FaceTiming, and there were times she had the phone like right here
It
and
was
here.
very cute. All you could see was a big eye. But she was 104,
She
so
had,
bless
and she had done,
her.
and this is in again, a low income family, so this is a real simple way of getting the job
And he
done.
said to us after he hung up, he said, I had to take that call. It was for my grandma. She's
Yeah.
104. You got to pick up the phone when she calls you. So anyway, so if
That's
you
pretty
have
cool.
an older person in your family who has suffered from loss recently, who's lost a family member or someone that they were close to, or someone who's in declining health, pick up the phone and call them, or send them an email, or send them a text message if they're texters, whatever mode of communication, send them a card.
So we've given you a lot to think about, and then here's the prompt. We were wondering when are we going to get to this stuff, but here's the prompt. So you talk about elder abuse. If you've heard about it, how did it make you feel? And again, you guys we're giving you the baton of this world. So what steps can we as a society take moving forward to make life better for our elders and reduce the risk factors.
Absolutely.
All right, very good.
Okay,
Peace.
well, remember your quiz and discussion are due Monday night. I'll send an email out to remind you, and I'll
This is
send
awesome.
emails out on the
So
remaining
we have
due
one
dates.
more week of lecture, is that right?
I think we have one more week,
Yeah,
because
we're gonna do
we don't have new material the
on
last
the
week of
last week.
class.
Give you a break because you're cramming for the other stuff. But yeah, you're gonna do trusts and wills and stuff like that. We're gonna talk a little more about the monies. Look at Mr. Krabs from SpongeBob. He talked about the monies. Okay. All right, guys. Peace. We'll
All
see you.
righty. Bye.